Hey, welcome back to Bulletproof TV. I'm Greg.
And I'm Matt.
Are you thinking about putting a red dot sight on your pistol? There's a lot of controversy out there on how to do it, what to get.
Yep, there's a lot of options, so stick around and we'll walk you through it.
We'll be right back.
All firearms in this episode have been safety checked and cleared. No ammunition is allowed on the indoor set during filming.
Hey, welcome back. There's a lot of reasons why people want to put red dot sights on their pistols, whether it's for a carry gun or whether it's for a competition range gun. We're going to talk today about some of the terminology and just walk you through it step by step, take some of the mystery out of it, and how to go about this, very simply. All right, so adding a red dot sight to your pistol. Why do people want to do this?
Well, as you age, eyesight tends to diminish. Maybe you want target focus because you're carrying this as a self-defense gun and you want to be able to focus on your threat.
Or maybe you just watch YouTube and Instagram guys with beards and tattoos and they say you got to get a dot because it's cool.
Yeah.
But no matter, we're going to run into each one of these terms individually. The first thing you need is a gun with an optic cut on top. That would be whether it's from the factory or whether it's aftermarket. There's aftermarket companies that do the milling on the top strap of the slide if you don't have a gun from the factory with it. And basically, each one of these cuts has a different footprint. And there is no standardization in the industry. Everybody seems to have their own optic cut footprint on the slide, whether it's Glock or whether it's SIG or Walther, whoever. And what you need to do is you need to identify what type of optic cut you have, whether it's an MOS or an RMSC or whatever it is, and then find an appropriate optic for it.
Okay, so another option is if you happen to have a pistol with a Picatinny rail on top, you can mount your optic right to the Picatinny rail. This is a Seymour Railway sight. You see this a lot on competition pistols. That's how this pistol's set up for a 22 competition match with the Seymour Railway. It just attaches right onto the Picatinny rail, and you're good to go.
Another style that you see on a lot of range guns and competition guns, open guns, is an external mounting bracket on the frame to mount your red dot up top. You also have revolvers, which some of them you can take the back sight off and they're cut already for some type of sight base or have a Picatinny type rail. So there's a lot of different options out there depending on whether it's a carry gun, a range gun, 22. A lot of different options out there.
Glock also started selling replacement slides, so if you have an older Glock that does not have a cutout for a plate and it's only got iron sights on it, you can buy just the slide and it'll have the footprint or the adapter plate and the footprint. There's some options out there. So you can update a Gen 1 Glock 19 and make it basically like a Glock 19 MOS.
Right. Cool. So every manufacturer has an optic cut that seems to be called something different. And the screw mounting pattern is different. So you need to figure out what optic cut you have, and you need to figure out what optic you're going to buy, what red dot you're going to buy that will fit that optic cut. So generally there's two different ways. What are the two different ways that these go on?
So in this example here, you can see how nice and low that this red dot sets down on the slide. That's a direct mount, requires no plate. And that allows you to look through your red dot and still see your iron sights, also called co-witnessing. The other method would be if you needed an adapter plate. So on this pistol here, you can see the adapter plate below this red dot. This is a Trijicon RMR. They have their own unique footprint. And that's a red dot mounted to a plate, and the plate is mounted to the pistol. It sets up high, and as you can see, the sight's set below the bottom of the frame here, so you're not able to co-witness when you're mounting this pistol in this configuration.
And there's different thickness plates. A lot of them are super thin to try and get that optic down as low as possible to the top of the slide. But generally, there's two different type of optics. One is called an open emitter, and one's called a closed emitter. This Holosun 407 has an open emitter. The glass is in the front, and it has no glass in the back. You can see I can put my finger all the way in there. It's not enclosed in the back. The emitter is a little red LED that sits just about back here, and what it does is it projects the red dot forward onto the front glass, and that's where your red dot comes. This is typically, for years, most of these red dot type sights are considered an open emitter. The hot lick now is a closed emitter, which has glass across the back. One of the benefits is that if you're carrying this under your shirt, you can get all sorts of crud and crap and body hair and deodorant flakes and everything down inside that little, it's like a cup. 95-degree day with 100% humidity, you're going to sweat, and you're going to get sweat.
That stuff has to go somewhere.
It's got to go somewhere, yeah. So it's a pain in the butt to clean that deep little cavity. Whereas this is the new hotness, an enclosed emitter. It has a piece of glass over the back and it has a piece of glass over the front. So you can literally just take a wipe or your T-shirt, whatever, wipe that off. So that's open emitter versus closed emitter. And that's one of the biggest choices today that guys are looking at is, what am I going to do with it? And what style do I want, open or closed emitter?
Yeah, so if this is a competition gun, open emitter will probably be fine. That may meet your needs. If you're carrying it as a concealed carry weapon, closed emitter offers a little insurance policy. You want to make sure if you drop that thing in the mud, you pick it up, you're good to go. With an open emitter, that may not be. With an open emitter, that may not be the case. With a closed emitter, you're protecting that system.
Right. You can see this if you're at the range. It's no big deal to go over to the safety table and wipe out. If you get some gunk and gook on there, it's no big deal. But if you've got this under your shirt, you want to have it as serviceable as possible. So once you've picked whether you want an open style emitter or a closed style emitter, I think the next thing is whether you want a red dot or a green dot or a different shaped dot. Basically, we call the dot a reticle.
Yep, so red and green, and now the browns and golds are getting popular. You have some options there. You're even starting to see blue colored reticles. The human eye picks up the greens better than the reds, but it picks up the golds and the browns better than the greens. So keep in mind, 30% of all males are red cone deficient in this country. So if you're red cone deficient, probably want to go with a green or a gold reticle. As far as the shape of your reticle goes, you have some options there too. Sometimes you'll see just a regular red dot, and other times you can get a reticle with a dot in the center and a circle around the outside. That could be in a different measurement. So one of the ways that they reference the size of the dot is through MOA. That's an angular measurement, and it is 1/60th of 1 degree. And that subtends to, or translates to, 1.047 inches downrange at 100 yards. MOA is an abbreviation that stands for minute of angle. It's an angular measurement, and that measurement is 1/60th of 1 degree.
So you'll see on these dots that it'll say a 2 MOA dot or a 6 MOA dot. That's really what I see as the most popular ones. If you have a dot with a circle around it, it might be a 2 MOA dot with a 32 MOA circle around it. And that's rated at 100 yards. So when you start to move it to 50 yards, you cut that in half, right? And then you move it to 25 yards, you cut that in half again. So a 2 MOA dot with a 32 MOA circle around it would be at 25 yards about an 8-inch circle. The outer circle would be about covering an 8-inch pattern, a fist-sized pattern at 25 yards. And then at 12 yards, it's even less than that. It's a 3 or 4-inch pattern. So just to give you an idea of, as you're looking through the dot, what those sizes mean.
Right. One of the other options you'll see, I currently run this on my Trigicon RMR, is a triangle. So this particular dual illumination dot, meaning it has no battery, it's illuminated by fiber optic across the top and tritium inside the unit. It has a 12.9 MOA triangle, which I find really good if I want to do precision work. I use the top of the triangle, and if I want to work on speed or stay shooting in a Steel Challenge match, I superimpose that triangle on my target. And from the distances we're shooting at, it's typically pretty good. So because there's no battery, I don't have to pull off the optic to change the battery. So that I don't have to worry about re-zeroing it. And the lifespan of the tritium is roughly 13 years. After that, it's got to be serviced. There's also nothing to turn on, turn off here. So the battery's not going to die on you. at the time you need it the most.
So that's a good point. Obviously, no battery. There are sights that have a battery in a battery tray, and that's something that you want to consider. Is battery life. Most of these Holosons, and we're not sponsored by Holosun, we just happen to have a bunch of them here. The battery life is about 20,000 hours to 50,000 hours, depending on what power you have it on, the intensity, and whether it's got shake awake or not. So, that's something to consider. But you made a good point. If it's got a, battery in it, how are you going to change that battery? If it's got a battery tray, that's fine. You just change the battery out there. If it's got a battery underneath it, like some of the lower cost sites do, you have to take the sight off, and then you have to re-zero it after you change your battery. So that's something you should think about. So Matt, you mentioned that style. We have some with a battery. We have some that has a battery and a solar backup. And then this one is just solar. This is an SCS from Holosun, and it's a direct mount. They make an SCS-MOS, direct mounts right on the Glock. It doesn't need a plate. And they make these for, I believe, HK, Walther, Smith & Wesson, Glock. Just drop right on. So you need to know what footprint you have and buy the appropriate sight for it.
Yeah, they did a nice job with that. And as you can see, they even machined in the grasping grooves to the side of this optic. So nice job and great attention to detail. If you've got OCD like I do, that probably means a lot to you.
And I'll tell you what, I set this out on the windowsill for about 3 days to charge it up, and they say it keeps it charged for over a year. And this is a range toy, a range gun, so this lives in the safe. It doesn't get any sunlight, and I've been shooting this quite a bit, and no problem. This has got a multi-reticle system, so it's got a push button on the side, just like this one, and you can change the reticle to a dot or a circle dot or just that big circle, just scrolling through this. And there are models that have red and green combination. You're going to pay a little bit more for them. They're about $100 more than the standard red one, but there are combinations.
Yep, and that's another good point. With my RMR, I can't change the reticle. I also can't change the light intensity. So if I go to the range and I'm facing into the sun on the morning of a match, or I just want to go 0 and I got sun in my eyes, I have no way to change the intensity. Fortunately with this, the fiber optic will collect more light, but on other optics, if you can't change the intensity and it doesn't naturally increase with the increase in sunlight, that could work against you. It might be an option you want to have.
You got what you got. Yeah. Another thing that people tend to complain about is if you're in a dark room looking out a window into the bright sunlight, sometimes it washes out. There's dots like this SCS that it actually regulates itself to wherever you're pointing it. It has sensors inside, so you might be pointing it over here in the dark, and it's one intensity, and as soon as you point it outside into the light, it changes intensity. So they got some pretty cool technology in these sights. They really do. So the next thing you want to consider when you're buying the combination of sight to go with your gun is whether or not they co-witness. And co-witness means whether or not you can see the sights through the window of the optic and whether or not they're usable. On this Glock 26 with this 407 Holosun, I can't see the sights through the window. The sight is blocked by the back of this gun. By the back of the red dot. On this Glock 34, I don't know if we can get it on. We'll post up some images.
Pick it up.
Where you can see the sights. As you look through the window of the optic, you can actually see the sights. So if the optic battery went bad or the optic failed for any reason, you've still got the sights that you're looking through that window, which is, for guys with carry guns, they think it's pretty critical. So when you go to Google what footprint you have on your gun, and you Google which Holosun is a brand, let's just say, or Vortex or whoever it is, which ones fit that footprint, you can go on and Google. There's plenty of people who posted whether or not you can get a co-witness with that, whether or not you're going to be able to see the sights. And a lot of it has to do with these plates. If you've got a big thick plate, it might raise the sight up so much that you can't see your sights through the window. Or you can get a little skinny plate. There's a couple of plate and screw manufacturers out there that that it makes life a lot easier.
And another option you have is if your optic is higher up, is you can put suppressor height sights on there. Because the suppressor would take up a larger diameter at the end of your barrel, they made heights that were engineered to see over that suppressor. However, they come in handy here too if you want to put them on the top of the slide. A lot of times if your sights are too low, that'll raise them up enough that you can co-witness through the window of your optic.
Right. So there's a lot of guys that are using these older hollow sun sights, and you'll see on gun forums or blogs that they use suppressor height sights. And you'll be able to see them. They look a heck of a lot taller.
Much taller. One consideration, if you're going to put suppressor height sights on your pistol, make sure that front sight can clear your holster. Now you're taking up more room inside the holster, so you just want to make sure you have clearance.
Which brings up a pretty good point, real quick on holsters. Make sure that your gun fits your holster and that your holster is actually cut for the optic. You're spending a lot of money for these. You've got a lot of money. Holsters aren't cheap if you're buying a quality holster, so make sure that your holster fits your optic. All right. So far, we've identified what kind of footprint we have on our gun. We've picked out the options that we want on our sight. We've picked a sight that is compatible with the footprint. What's next?
Time for installation. So, in order to prep for installation, I like to take all the screws I'm using, the slide that I'm screwing the screws into, and all the metal hardware, and clean it off either with brake cleaner or denatured alcohol. I prefer brake cleaner.
Yep.
I prefer brake cleaner. And the reason for that is a lot of times they use oil when they're drilling and tapping and manufacturing these things. So you want to take that off. You want to make sure everything's locked down nice and tight on that slide.
Exactly. And I mean, it's really pretty simple. There's a cover cap on top of the slide cut. You take that off, and you either put your adapter plate on, or you do it as a direct mount. But typically, two little screws, little M4 screws, or tiny little screws. A lot of them from the manufacturer come with blue Loctite already applied. Vibratite, I like Vibratite, which it doesn't harden. It stays kind of soft, and in the gunsmithing world, Vibratite is really the way to go these days. But you screw them down, and I think the recommended torque is 12 to 15 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, inch-pounds. So, you don't want to crank these down, because if you look at the threads of those little tiny screws, it's easy to strip them out. You have a little inch-pound torque wrench.
Yes.
That you can use.
So this is a torque wrench. Remember, units matter. It's inch-pounds, not foot-pounds. Foot-pounds are for lug nuts. These screws, you need to use inch-pounds, or you're going to shear the screws off and have a brand new set of problems to deal with.
The manufacturer gives you this little sight tool, and they recommend to use this to tighten it down, and you're not going to get much torque with this, and that's fine. That's what they're looking for. They don't want you to tighten this down. If you strip the slide, you're going to be shit out of luck. So just take it easy on the tightening.
Yeah, the old school guys used to use an Allen wrench. They'd say they would tighten it down till it was snug and then go a quarter turn, but that's a subjective term. So I prefer the more scientific inch-pounds. Not being sponsored, but the Fat Wrench is a great torque wrench. It's an acronym, Firearm Actorizing Torque Wrench. There's a dial on it. You just set the dial on it, and you turn it until you get sufficient tight.
It's like
that's
$30 or $40. It's well worth it. If you work on your guns, it's well worth it. So speaking of screws, screws are interesting, because there's a pissing match between the optic manufacturers and the gun manufacturers on screws. The screw length on a lot of guns, especially Glocks, some SIGs, matter if you mount the optic direct without a plate or with a plate. Think about it, you're building up, you're stacking up a distance, so you need a longer screw. So some optics come with multiple screws in there, so pay attention, you want to have the right length screw. On a Glock, on the right hand side is where the channel is for the extractor plunger, and it's open right down to the extractor plunger. So I've seen guys that load their screws up with a ton of blue Loctite, I mean dripping off, and it gets down in that extractor plunger and it gums it up to the point that the gun won't run. Or if you mount your optic directly, that the screw's too long, and as it goes down it hits that extractor plunger and it doesn't allow the plunger to move back and forth. So they come to a match, shoot the gun once, the gun locks up, and they're like, all I did was put a dot on it, what the hell, So that's something to pay attention to. If you Google, like a Holosun EPS carry and a Glock 43X screws, you'll see that a lot of guys have posts on they've had to mill down the tip of the screw a couple of thousandths to make it work, or they bought screws from there's a company, Tack Rig, that I buy screws from. Their website is really helpful. They tell you what combinations of dots and guns and what screw kits you can get, and they're cheap. They're $6, $8. But that's something that a lot of folks run into problems with, is those screw lengths. All right, so you have your red dot installed and you're ready to rock and roll. Go to the range and sight it in. What's the tips and tricks for sighting in that you use?
Well, one of the best shortcuts you can use is a laser bore sighter. So what you do is turn it on, insert it in the barrel, and it projects a green dot downrange. And that green dot will tell me where roughly my point of impact will be, and then I can move my sights to be just about on that laser. Keep in mind, lasers project out in a straight line, and bullet trajectories have an arc. They don't travel in a straight line. So that's something you'll have to adjust for, and that there's a lot of factors there. That's one of the nice things about red dots, is if you change the weight of your projectile, your powder charge, your ammo in general, you can adjust the red dot to be zeroed at the same distance.
Dial it up or down for that particular load, a carry load versus a range load, let's just say.
Or if you have an adjustable rear sight, but you can't do that with combat sights. So
That's a good point. Most of the sights have a elevation screw up on the top, and they have a windage screw on the side. And most of the sights that you buy, the manufacturer gives you a little tiny screwdriver to adjust that. So typically what I do is I start at about 3 yards, take a couple shots, see where I am, make a rough adjustment, right? And that's how you do it too.
see where your groups are printing and adjust accordingly.
And then how far do you like to go once you get it rough? What's your distance? 20 yards, 25 yards? What's your distance that you finally set them?
I like 25 yard zero for my pistol.
Yeah. So once you get it all set up and you have your mounting screws mounted, I see you have your witness white paint and your marker. What's that for?
Yeah, so once we get these screws torqued down to proper torque, so I like to put a witness mark. I use a silver Sharpie that jumps off on the black housing of this optic and the black screw head. It's a line from the screw over to the housing after my screw is properly torqued, and that way, if my screw starts walking itself out, the lines will be broken. It'll be an indicator to me I need to check my torque.
Yep. All right, so we got the gun sighted in. We've got our screws tightened down. The next thing is how to shoot a gun with a red dot sight compared to shooting a gun with iron sights. We've said in different previous videos, on iron sights you want to shoot and focus on the front sight. It's front sight focus. What do you do different with red dot sights?
So red dot sights allow you to have target focus, and you just superimpose the red dot over your target and deliver rounds.
So I hope this took some of the mystery out of red dots and mounting them to your gun. Stay safe out there. Remember to like and subscribe. And once again, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Plumstead Arms. They're very generous with the channel. Thanks again. See you guys next time.